Hey everybody, Alex from SCADA here. Welcome to Ignition 101. We're going to give a little bit of a detailed view into most of the functionality in Ignition. And then in Ignition 102, we'll go into setting up vision windows. Ignition 103 will be perspective views. And 104 will talk about the Ignition Launchpad projects. So first we'll start here with a basic Ignition architecture. So we have an Ignition server running either on a computer on your desk or in a data center on premises at a manufacturing facility, or it can also run in the cloud. Then we have clients that connect to that either via mobile devices, web browsers, or vision clients, which can also run on touch panels with the Perspective workstation. Those would be like on a control panel in a facility. The Ignition server can connect to databases and also connect to PLCs. And then if we want to look at a larger architecture, we can have enterprise systems that have maybe a main corporate site and then individual manufacturing facilities. Here's site A and site B. Maybe we have remote sites that connect back to that. And we can set that all up with the gateway network functionality in Ignition. We'll save that for one of the more advanced videos. And you'll see similar architectures with like the hub and spoke. You can click through any of these to see different architecture setups. So the first piece we'll dive into, once we have an Ignition server set up, it will be called a gateway. So we can go to an Ignition gateway. This particular gateway we're using for the SCADA training. It exists in the cloud running on a Linux instance on Linode. And this is where we've created our projects and everything for the SCADA training. So here I'm logged in as an administrator, so I have full access to everything. We can go to the Home tab. We can download the designer launcher if we need to. We can see what designer connections are currently configured and active. We can launch Perspective projects from here. We can download Perspective Workstation if we want to launch a workstation instance on a computer. We can see any existing sessions, how long they've been up, when they last communicated. These just haven't cleared out of the system yet, but I closed those down. We can also set up branding. So if we want to have custom colors and logos and things on our login screen, we can set that up down here. Then we can launch Vision clients. If we have the Vision client launcher installed, we can also download the Vision client launcher and see any client sessions that are open. And this can be useful for troubleshooting, seeing who's connected to a system, what projects they have open, etc. Then we can go to the Platform tab. This gives us gateway settings, project and module information, license key info. If we have redundancy set up, which we don't on this one. Modes would be different deployment modes for runtime configurations on here. We have our store and forward engine. If our network connection to our database goes down, Ignition will track any data that needs to write to the database, and then it will dump that to the database once the connection's restored. We can import things from the Ignition Exchange or view the Ignition Exchange. In the Ignition 104 series, we grab the Launchpad projects from the Exchange, and in 102 and 103, we grab the ad hoc trending resources. And we can also do gateway backups and restores. So if I want to download all of the configuration and tags and projects from this gateway, I can download that. If I have one from another project or customer, I can restore that here. Then we also have general security settings that we can manage. These are all just default for the moment. User sources. These allow us to set up user sources we can use to set up users. In this case, we're using the default for the SCADA Forge project, and then in Ignition 201, we're using Rio Oso for the design challenge portion. Identity providers, these allow us to manage more complex user information like roles and emails and first names and last names, and tie into external sources like OpenID Connect or options that support SAML. This is very common with things like Microsoft Active Directory. Corso Systems uses it for our Google Workspace settings. We can have secret providers if we need to store any secret information on here, like authentication codes or API tokens or things. We don't have that set up now. We can set up audit profiles, which will allow the gateway to track any interaction with the system, set point changes to tags, when users log in and out, etc. That can be useful for like 21 CFR 11 compliance in the pharmaceutical industry, or just tracking, what's going on with your users. We can manage security levels, so we can create roles and things for our identity providers to map to, and then we can use this in perspective or vision to secure things in the client. We don't have any zone settings for security zone setup here. Then we can also do API keys to interact with the gateway API. And if we had an OAuth 2 client, we can configure that here, which we don't have set up. And then also up at the top, we have our projects. Each project is a separate unit of an Ignition gateway that we can use for, say, for SCADA Forge training. We're doing our Ignition 102 and 103 pieces in there. So everything related to that's under the SCADA Forge project. Then we have the Rio Oso project for Ignition 201, and KPI and OEE are for Ignition 104. And then we also have a Ignition modules page you can use to select Ignition modules and get a breakdown of what you might need to order from inductive automation. So that's a separate project. So this allows us to keep things separate in projects. So if we had, say, a large manufacturing facility with multiple pieces of equipment, maybe we set up a project specific for each piece of equipment. So we're not looking at, thousands of windows across the entire facility in one project. And that can also help with security and overall system performance by separating that out. Then we go to connections. We have device connections. So these connect to PLCs. In this case, we're using the programmable device simulator. Connection settings. If we have any resources like a BACnet device for building management, we would set that up there. We also have database settings. This includes all of our translators to connect to different databases. And then our database connections. So these are all databases that we're connected to. We have a PostgreSQL database running on the same server as the Ignition Gateway, and then a few SQLite databases set up for these projects. And then the OPC UA server. This allows any OPC UA clients to connect to Ignition to pull data out, along with various security settings and things. And then we have security set up there, and the internal connection is just set up in there, which if we have additional connections set up here, maybe we're connecting to like an Opto22 GrooveEpix code assist engine here to pull tags across. We would create an OPC connection to that. And the quick client allows you to see what devices and tags and things are all connected via OPC UA here. So you can monitor things and do some troubleshooting there. Then we go to the network tab. This gives us setup for a web server to hook into Ignition. This is all just set up by default. Email settings. This allows you to set up a connection to an email server. In this case, we have it set up with our Google Workspace at Corso. Then we have gateway network settings. These are all default. This allows you to set up gateway network connection global settings. And then if we're going to connect to another gateway, like if we're doing in, say, the enterprise architecture where the gateway at site A and site B are connected to the central gateway, that allows us to expose tag providers and different information across the board. And we don't have the enterprise administration module set up here. This allows us to manage like project deployments and tag deployments and things from this gateway. And we can set those settings up there if we have the enterprise administration module set up. We're not using that here. We'll get into that in one of the more advanced videos. Then the services tab, we can set up historians. We have some history providers set up for some projects. We can also look at tag providers, which we set up for Ignition 201 for the Rio Oso project. Then we have alarm settings, alarm pipelines that we set up for Ignition 201 project, alarm journals, which are basically alarm history that we have set up here for a couple projects. Alarm notification. This is where we set up notification profiles that we can then use in the alarm notification pipelines. We can set up rosters for alarm notification. Manage any scripts if we have, different scripts for different languages for what alarm notifications look like. And scheduling allows us to set up user schedules based on, workday, so users can only receive alarm notifications when they're scheduled to. And then we have report diagnostics here that will show us any reports that we have set up and scheduled and when they're executing. And then we have sequential function charts. We'll get into that in a later video. We don't have any configured at the moment. And then transaction groups using the SQL Bridge module allows us to write structured data to a database very easily. And we have one set up for the Ignition 201 project there. And then event streams allow us to tie into various services like Kafka to pass data from Ignition to event streams. And we'll get into that in a more advanced video. Then finally, we have our diagnostics page. This gives us an overview of our overall gateway health here. Then we can look at a dashboard if we want to create our own metrics here. We can add different components here, so we can look at, say, database storage for our Rio Oso project here. And we can save those and have things that we can pull up if we want. Then we have the system logs. This gives us any logs or error messages or things. We can also write to this from scripting if we want to do some troubleshooting during development. Execution shows any scripts or instances of internal things that are running. This can be useful if you're trying to do some troubleshooting on long-running scripts or see what sort of performance issues you're running into. This gives us a performance dashboard showing memory and CPU usage. If there's any items with slow response times, we'll see that here. Then we can see any scripts that are currently running. If we need to kill something, maybe we have a while loop that's not exiting or something, we can put that in there. And then any gateway scripts, so startup, shutdown, timer, tag change scripts, etc. We'll see some diagnostics on that. And then any threads that are running on the overall gateway system. And this can be useful if we have something we need to kill the thread for some particular reason. We can come in here and do that. So that's a basic overview of the Ignition Gateway webpage. Next, we can go into the designer, you would come here and download the client launcher, and that will allow you to install the designer launcher and then launch a designer. That's pretty straightforward to figure out. But we have a designer open here. So this is what we're opening up into our SCADA Forge project in our designer. This allows us to set up our alarm notification pipelines, any sequential function charts, any overall scripting, like for gateway events, when we're starting up or shutting down the gateway, running an update. We can have scheduled tags that run on a particular schedule, timer tags that run on a cyclic time. We can also create our own project library scripts here. So like the ad hoc trending resources have a script here that's set up, and this opens up a Jython editor that we can use to create the script there. Then we have the perspective section and the vision section, where we would use anything in perspective goes in the perspective section. If we have any events for gateway level stuff, session events, style classes, and then our views. And then we also have transaction groups. Those are between perspective and vision. If we have those set up, we go through that in the 201 course. And then vision, any client events that we're using, all of our windows, and then templates. And then any event streams, named queries, which are effectively templated queries that we can use across the project or across the gateway, and any reports that we have set up. And we go more into detail on all of that in the 201 course. And if we go from here, we can select perspective, go tools, launch perspective. This opens the client side of things. This will pull up our ad hoc trend screen by default based on our settings. So this allows you to get into the client. So if you want to do any testing or anything from there, you can. We can also select vision, launch project, launch windowed, and that will also default to the vision ad hoc trend screen once that opens up here. And perspective runs in a browser or mobile devices, and then vision runs in a Java-based client. So that's opening up here. The main difference is all of the perspective stuff runs on the gateway. So if you have a lot of perspective clients open, you may need a larger amount of memory and processing power on your gateway. And then this is a vision client. Everything here runs on the computer, going back to the gateway for tag data and things as needed. So this opens our vision client here, and we just have, from editing the display components, this isn't super well formatted or anything, but that's what pops up there automatically. So that's a brief run through kind of the overall architecture and all the different things that you'll touch when you're getting into Ignition development for the first time. Let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, thank you for watching. Have a great day.